he is the one bringing Resurrect Priest. Sorry, wasn't Tyler. I was thinking
Right.
of Ryvius, and he's got Forbidden Words in there. That's pretty interesting over Holy Smite.
Yeah, it's a weird list overall. He's also the player, I believe, running Injured Tolvir in his Resurrect Priest to have a little bit more game versus aggro, which I think if you are going to be bringing the Res Priest, absolutely, I want to see a little bit more resilience against the early game boards, because it's been shown pretty consistently, I think, that minions coming down on turn 4 and 5 are a little bit too slow at the moment. But his other two decks, in the Demon Hunter, obviously, you're always bringing that. The Questing Adventurer is a interesting build, interesting take on it, that I think could give him a pretty big leg up in the mirror.
Do you think it's good in the mirror? I actually think this is not the greatest card in the mirror. In my experience, it tends to get very clunky. You get a huge payoff when it comes together with all of the twin slices, but
oh yeah,
as a late game draw, when you'd rather be drawing something that's good on its own, I feel it can really fizzle out quickly. But as for che0nsu, he's got the che0nsu build of Druid, which I think has largely fallen out of favor due to just the on-trend style that the Japanese players have been propagating, which is no che0nsu and none of the heavy end cards. I think Shakti was running che0nsu without Gift of the Wild and Forest Aid, but che0nsu's got Gift of the Wild with the che0nsu.
That's right. He's also cutting one Mount Seller in order to make room for this, which does make sense. I think generally it's agreed upon that 3 minions is what you want to be running, be it 2 Exotic Mount Seller and che0nsu, 2 Mount Seller and Ysera, or 1 of each, as we see that che0nsu has gone for here. Still not the biggest fan of this list. I think you have to go all in or just cut the che0nsu completely. And if I had to choose one of those, I would just say that che0nsu is not worth going for at the moment. Because with only 1 Gift of the Wild, in addition to, I suppose, Overflow, everything else just feels so lackluster, because if you're comboing your che0nsu with a Glowfly Swarm, you've just played 2 spells from your hand, so it's very likely to massively reduce the amount of Glowflies that you're even summoning anyway. I think this could be a real weak spot in the lineup for che0nsu.
I agree. I definitely have a fair amount of respect for Druid, fallen ever since that time I got absolutely destroyed when I was, on the camp for Druid, but it just got ran over by Paladins after day 1. But if you are going to be Druid, I agree that it's got to be the double Mount Seller build, in my opinion, just because it is far more consistent. And the Mount Seller, even if it's drawn late with just a couple spells, can get something on the board, whereas che0nsu, without the perfect breakpoints of the numbers and spells in hand, and they have to be the perfect ratio of mana cost as well, it can just be a lackluster card.
It really can. But now, Gia, the first game that we have up is Demon Hunter versus Priest. Another matchup for Priest here that I think we kind of go back and forth on in terms of who we think is in the lead. It's kind of the same as Warrior, where it's touted as Priest being in the lead, but I'm not necessarily convinced. With this matchup, it's kind of the other way. People are saying that the Demon Hunter is favored versus, or we were thinking the Priest was favored versus Demon Hunter. We're told the other way, that the Demon Hunter is in fact in the lead. Are you still of that opinion that Demon Hunter has enough longevity to overtake the Priest?
I do think that Demon Hunter is still in a good spot here. Ryvius's techs will definitely help. Like you mentioned, the double Injured Tolvir could be an annoyance at the beginning, especially if it curves into a Coin Psychopomp or something of the like. But the fact that this is Resurrect Priest over Galakrond Priest, no Apotheosis included, I think there's much less of a punish for Demon Hunter to be leaving up minions. And they've also just got the Kayn to go straight through all of those taunts in the late game.
That's right. Kayn can be absolutely brutal in this matchup. The copies of Questing Adventurer, I think, are a little bit more questionable in the matchup. They can be very, very good, obviously, if you can just get them down right at the start. But there's a Mass Dispel in there. There's a Shadow Word Death. Even just a Penance is often going to be enough to take it out, maybe with some kind of extra damage along the way. So I think the main plan is definitely for Ryvius to go much more aggressive in the early game and then make sure he hits some kind of card draw to transition over to lethal.
Right, che0nsu does have that. It's going to be difficult for him, though, with the 1 copy of Spectral Sight. I do think this is a card that is commonly cut in favor of Chaos Strike, just to...
Oh, yeah, of course.
A lot of the time, Spectral Sight gets stuck in the middle, so you might as well just play the card that draws 1 anyway, and also get benefit of the attacks. The list from che0nsu is the way we are used to seeing Demon Hunter, more so for the mirror. So I think that Beaming Sidekick, although on paper seems like it's not the best versus Priest, it actually could give some resilience against the AoE.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry for getting that wrong with the questing adventure. Obviously, that's Ryvius who's playing that build, not che0nsu. But it's I like the point you bring up there. It's kind of similar to the aggro hunter, where explosive trap is one of the most crucial cards in the matchup at a fixed 2 damage AoE. And even though the priest can play around with its AoE a little bit more by fitting in Vargoth plus AoE or 2 AoE spells in the same turn, overall, if you can get your Satyr Overseer up to a 4/4 instead of a 4/2, you can start chugging away very nicely and be much more resilient.
Indeed. We are a sidekick in hand for che0nsu. Not looking very premium without a good minion to buff in the first place. So we're just going to see the Umberwing kept, and for Ryvius, the injured 12-year tech already looking like it's going to pull its weight.
Were you at all tempted by holding on to the Glaive-bound Adept there, Gia, with a Umberwing already in hand? Or am I getting a bit too much mid-game focused?
It does seem very powerful against Priest, and the greedy keeps, in theory, makes sense if you don't expect to be fighting for board that heavily in the early game, but it's not so much about fighting for board in this matchup, I think. It is making sure that you get enough damage in the early game before Priest can generally come back. It so happens for Ryvius, he does have those 2 tech cards that allow him to fight for board early, and I think that warrants che0nsu tossing the Glaive-bound even more.
I grow impatient.
So obviously I'm looking at an Umberwing on this turn, so the question is just whether or not you're swinging here. Obviously it does kind of detract from the power of another Overseer or Glaive-bound Adept, but with the second one in hand, let's just get swinging, start trying to close out the game, even though it's just turn 2.
Right, I think the swing makes discrete damage differences, because if you expect Ryvius just to heal it back up, the difference between 2-4 and 2-3 is that you would need to expend something more than just a hero power.
Or the other 1/1 in play.
Sorry, I was thinking that in the case that they're 12-year and heals it up, you would have to use your hero power and something else.
Oh, right, of course, sorry. Yeah.
Well, there's a che0n. Early as now, but I think the che0n is trading.
I will still find you.
Well, it does put him pretty far ahead on board, and it plays around the Grave Rune. And this is a play that Ryvius was trying to set up in the first time we saw this Priest, but was unable to do so, unfortunately. But here, che0nsu brilliantly spots that, and
right.
I mean, if he didn't go for that, this could be just a blowout right from the start here.
Agreed. It was warranted respect. che0nsu heavily rewarded for it. But Ryvius, the turn right now looks bad, but he's got tools to deal with che0n later on as soon as che0nsu plays more threats. The Shadow Madness, another tech inclusion that is absolutely premium in this matchup.
And just look at how devastating it's going to be already. che0n and the Overseer both dealt with the 2 most threatening cards he's facing by a long way. And che0nsu is going to have to transition away from overwhelming with board presence into well, just kind of trying to draw into some bigger threats.
Right. I'm already looking at this Altruist and hoping that the Spectral Sight can brew something up. Of course, it's probably going to take a skull before Altruist gets a lot of work done. But as it stands, just a Battle Fiend seems far too weak to Breath of the Infinite, and che0nsu having used both weapon charges, that feels kind of bad. Can't get the Glaive-bound Battle Cry this turn. So there's an option to just play the Glaive-bound as a 6/4.
Whoa.
It does feel awful.
I feel like Umberwing plus Battle Fiend puts a comparable amount of damage on the board, especially when you factor in the second attack buff that Battle Fiend will get next turn.
It's comparable damage, but the health is where the crux is, right? The Breath of the Infinite Holy Nova is just so worrisome. I'm not against going for the draw here, because he could just play the Glaive-bound next turn and still have the weapon develop. But man, that makes this turn for Ryvius so easy.
Depending on what Ryvius gets here as well, we could potentially see holding on to the Breath of the Infinite to go for it with Vargoth on the following turn. And Holy Nova does just straight up allow that if he wants to go for that line.
Yeah, I think without the choice of Holy Nova, that probably would signal Ryvius to go Breath of the Infinite. I don't think you can leave that much damage on board, but now that he has yet another piece of removal, this is really, really premium. Ooh.
Ooh. That's got to be the play here, right? You got
Mhm.
Altruist. Yes, you take a little bit less development on this turn, but you eat that up.
Yep. We are Altruist gamers now. Oh, okay. che0nsu going for max minion development with his mana usage.
Wow.
He did just see an AoE, but it was discovered, so I can't really get behind this. Especially since the skull is potentially locked in, depending on if the next draw is something like Warglaves.
And just look at this turn. Ryvius here can go for Psychopomp and hit either Tolvir or che0n, both of which are great.
I don't think the Tolvir is particularly good here. I'm still just looking at the Vargoth Breath.
Okay, yeah, I guess to just clear that little bit extra off the board. And it gets it in the pool for Mass Resurrection, which is a pretty big deal.
The curve I'm looking at for Ryvius is the Vargoth Breath, then he goes Psychopomp, Grave Runes, whatever gets resurrected, and then Mass Resurrect. This looked really clean to me. And so he does end up going for that in the correct order.
Yep. Whoa!
Okay.
che0nsu is given a bailout here, but of course it does mean he would be not killing, at least at face value, the Vargoth on board.
There's a decent chance that something allows him to clear it. I think you take this. The deck has given you a second chance to play the Skull for Outcast. The Prodigal Skull. Let's do it, che0nsu. Unless he wants to Glavebound this?
Right, Chaos Strike Glavebound is the other line you could consider, but you are just never outcasting the Skull if you do that.
And the I-Beam
so
potentially...
difficult to get it done.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
I-Beam
true.
potentially gets locked in as well. So he takes the halfway road of using the I-Beam and developing the Glavebound.
Right. So he's clearly still anticipating that Skull will be outcast at some point.
The Bone Wraith now makes it so that Ryvius can definitely Grave Rune a defensive minion. Right now there's a chance to resurrect che0n and Vargoth, both of which aren't very great Grave Runes targets for this position. But he's just gonna get the card in the pool, set up for the Mass Resurrect.
Sure. I mean, yeah. I was wondering if the che0n was that bad, because you could just Grave Runes it and then double trade to take all the damage off the board.
Sure.
But I don't hate this line at all.
It messes with Ryvius's Mass Resurrection pool a little bit. I think you would much rather get the taunts rather than higher odds of getting che0n. But in this case, it is pretty good because the Glavebound's already damaged.
Yeah, the real sad point is obviously no Vargoth, which you clearly wanted there to try and absolutely dominate the board. Because now all of a sudden it is not a foregone conclusion that this will stick around.
Man, che0nsu really wants to Skull again to set up for the Altruist, but the only way to make room for Skull is to draw another card. So he is looking to go for the Altruist this turn.
He could go Twin Slice, then play the Sigil Runner, then play Second Slice, and then Skull.
But that is so many potential
It's a lot of
Altruist
expenditure.
procs. Yeah.
Exactly.
So.
Whereas he's just going from the left-hand side with this play.
Alright. So gets the Skull.
It's not quite so as impressive as we were maybe hoping for, but it clears the board, allows him to keep shipping face.
Is it Skull though? He could just I-Beam. Could I-Beam the Olvir, right? And it still gets there.
Still gets there either way, I think, as long as he plays the Sigil Runner as well.
But this way he has to sink some damage into the minion, right?
I don't think so.
The side... Oh, he doesn't. Okay, never mind.
And he gets everything done. So we're happy on this turn.
Big push. But Ryvius, with that penance, makes this turn so easy. Just penance away the Altruist and gets the premium result as well.
Wow.
Psychopomp.
Alright, it's still not over though, Gia. I'm seeing a powerful play on the other side now. Warglaives of Azzinoth can be used to take out all 3 of the full health Kartut defenders here.
And it's so crazy that it's not over because Priest has just had powerful card after powerful card, but the fact that che0nsu has card draw cycles, it doesn't matter if your cards are more powerful than mine, if the quantity is greater than the quality in this case. che0nsu is close to the bottom of his deck, but not fatiguing anytime soon. If Ryvius doesn't draw more board clears, minions don't do anything because of Warglaives.
That's right, Bone Wraith, even Mass Dispel clearing off the attack is nice, but it is not winning you the game.
Oh my gosh, Demon Hunter is just nuts. Getting through 5/6 of the Kartut board with the 1 weapon alone.
I mean, obviously he didn't spend the full 18 mana on it, but this is almost 18 mana dealt with a 5 mana Kartut.
Now, Ryvius is facing down a 6/4. It's gonna get Mass Dispelled. Okay, very good draws. His next turn is amazing as well. Yeah, looking at the Infiltrator now. Ups and heal next turn.
Metamorphosis, though, is that little bit of extra damage. It's gonna be incredibly close here, but it's, weirdly enough, approaching the point where che0nsu can't actually attack into minions that much more.
Just a little.
If another Kartut comes down, it starts to become a consideration at least.
Well, none of Ryvius's cards can actually deal face damage, so as long as you're not at 0, I think it's okay.
Whoa.
Wait, I forgot a card that can deal face damage. Resurrecting Kain!
Very true.
Okay, so he can metamorphose and shoot the first half of Bone Wraith down immediately.
Yep.
He
I mean, he can
tanks
just play everything.
I think he's gonna lose 3 minions in this process, but redevelop a new one.
I mean, he could just freeze the 3-1.
True,
Might just even have to trade into it.
Very good point. Demon Hunter just doesn't give up, tanking away.
Yeah. Just think what would happen if this was old school Holy Nova, old school Holy Smite. Ryvius could be looking at lethal outs very soon.
And with all the buffs to Priest, you still want to get rid of their small changes. Not even a nerf, strictly.
Well, now he can't attack him to finish it off, or he will literally just die.
He's freezing. Sure. He's freezing. Okay, okay. I guess that messes with the res pool just a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. Stops any generated silence messing him up as well somehow.
Oh man, full clear for Ryvius.
Oh.
What are che0nsu's last 3 cards? I think there's a Glaive Bound in there.
That sounds about right.
Both Warglaives used. Just nothing good. Maybe a Twin Slice. Yup.
Ryvius is one good draw away from just absolutely locking out the game.
And we see him hold the Forbidden Words because he knows there's still a Glaive Bound as well.
Yep, very smart. Very, very smart.
But it's crazy that Demon Hunter managed to get Priest down to so few resources, and that is a good draw.
That is a fantastic draw. And this is really smart because by attacking in here, by killing it off, it means even if he got the Glaive Bound, he can't attack into anything. This is the Ryvius special play of denying Glaive Bounds by putting your opponent too low and putting a taunt in the way.
I feel that this one probably wasn't so deliberate. It was just literally his only play.
No, Gia,
But-
it was on
okay.
purpose for the
All right.
storylines.
Rather than a coincidental benefit. Of course, Ryvius planned it every turn one to make sure that his Kartut, when che0nsu was on
Exactly.
his last 2 cards off the top, would prevent a Glaive Bound from going off. Genius.
By Jove, I think she's got it. And I think we need to get a break here in order to recover from that one. Ryvius does, of course, bring himself 1 game up over his opponent. But we are going to be right back after this quick break before the thrilling conclusion of this series. We'll see you soon.
Handcuffed is like,
Is it something like kidnapping? Kidnap you to another GM together.
Another GM.
I'll probably choose Tyler. Because we have almost the same height. I feel like it's gonna be tough if you are handcuffed to someone taller.
1ヶ月間別のグラマスに手錠をかけるとしたらアルテムにします。まあ彼ぐらいしかちょっと許してくれそうにないので。
ポセシにかけます。1ヶ月間くらいかけててもまあ問題なさそうかなと思うので。
因为我还是选一个比较熟一点嘛，就 Kim 吧。我们两个比较熟一点。
돈 선수가 시키면 잘하고 잘 챙겨줘서 같이 있고 싶네요.
Florly, because we are friendly, I think. So, yeah, that's very good.
Welcome back, everybody, once again to Hearthstone Grandmasters, where we are well into our series of the South Korean team kill, I suppose you could call it, of che0nsu up against Ryvius. A pretty convincing win there for Ryvius on the priest there, the Resurrect Priest, a list that you and I think, are not necessarily convinced on, but Ryvius, in his usual fashion, has teched it in an interesting way to at least give him a good leg up against the aggro matchups.
Yeah, Ryvius, if you are not seeing him bring an off-the-wall archetype altogether, you can definitely count on him still having some unique tech inclusions. We see it from his Demon Hunter with the Questing Adventures, and then the Priest with the injured 12 years. And the 12 years really did help him out so much in the early game to give him the time to get to that big swing with the Vargoth Breath of the Infinite. He never really lost control of the board.
He did not, but now, Gia, a very different matchup indeed. One that we are seeing time and time again in the Demon Hunter mirror. But thankfully here, we have a slightly interesting twist, as always, as we were saying with Ryvius. And it is primarily the questing adventurer, which he has made room for in no small part by cutting one of the frozen Shadow Weavers, which feel pretty close to core at the moment, or at least very, very popular. And I was saying at the start, I feel like that might give him a good advantage because we've seen from Shaxi last week the power of an explosive questing adventurer in the mirror, but you didn't quite agree.
Yeah, I think that questing adventure has very specific hands that require it to come together. It usually can't get to a safe health immediate die from the other side until later on in the game, by which point, if you've been saving cards to build that up, you might just die on the backswing. And especially at the cost of cutting Frozen Shadow Weaver, I feel makes it not too great in the mirror.
Well, speaking of not too great in the mirror, obviously there's the Twin Slice available for che0nsu, but outside of that, Gia, this is a load of tosh.
Oh yeah, he's gonna have to start cycling with the Chaos Strikes, which thankfully for him line up pretty well against the Blazing Battle Mage. Ryvius probably didn't want to be coining out the sidekick, but that draw is pretty premium for che0nsu.
Yeah, it is. We were talking a lot. One of the things we're talking about, Gia, and you and your Mull It Over series were also considering was the timing of your threats, specifically in Demon Hunter, can be incredibly important.
Right.
Is this necessarily the time to go for Battle Fiend when you have an alternative, very strong play of Chaos Strike?
It seemed fine to just get the board there, and I don't think using one half of Twin Slice was particularly expensive there. But because che0nsu's next turn was looking up in the air, you don't really want to just be playing Chaos Strike on turn 3. I think that
Good point.
the fact that he's allowed to draw into closer to Satyr Overseer, which he got immediately, was the tipping point for the decision there.
Really like this decision as well here for che0nsu to deviate away from the Satyr Overseer plus Twin Slice, because this goes a lot wider on the board and makes it so once the Satyr Overseer is dead, he's not just kind of left with not much.
It's the same amount of minions played, but this is making Ryvius expend his already visible removal of just hero power or trade with Umberwing and 1/1 into a battlefield, and potentially allows che0n to have his own Satyr Overseer survive. But Ryvius, having held the coin this long, was for this purpose, making sure that his Overseer is as sturdy as possible.
That's exactly right, and I wonder if he does have the read here on no Twin Slice, weirdly enough, because che0nsu had a couple of opportunities where it was looking pretty good. But on both times, he deviated away from it. You may need to know some of the other cards in his hand in order to actually make that read. And Ryvius would probably go for it anyway, but it's just an interesting dynamic nonetheless.
It's tough for che0nsu. My first thought was Overseer, double Twin Slice, and kill their Overseer, but it looks so bad onto this board because the 2/2 immediately kills your own Satyr. So che0nsu gonna start with the Sigil Runner, probably ending up on... Oh. Wow. He can just play 4 slices and trade down the 4/4 that way if he wants, develop his Overseer, and trade down the 2/2.
It's not often you see the old General Grievous, but I think this might be the time.
It's a lot of resources expended, but I think it's justifiable. The next turn could just be Chaos Strike into whatever's off the top. Okay.
It's so hard to say. If he did go for the Satyr Overseer, then he is, of course, still leaving it to just die to a hero power plus the weapon.
True.
This has been such a dense matchup. Very, very complicated at all points.
Compact, chock full of decisions. Yeah, I think this ultimately did work out better for che0nsu, even putting down his sidekick that he drew to get the value trade. Value trades are so good in this matchup.
It also gave him the
about
chance.
turn 5.
Right, exactly. Gave him the chance as well to find the Warglaives, which would synergize fantastically with the Satyr Overseer for turn 6, which I think is a very valid game plan to start moving towards as well.
The Overseer definitely has particular turns where it wants to spike, of course, being the primary one, but it's looking like the board state has got to a point where it can't really get that much value unless it is paired with the Warglaives that you mentioned.
And at the end of it all, in the early game, we have reached somewhat of an equilibrium.
See his weakness.
Been so back
it
and
looks
forth.
like-
That draw for che0nsu was perfect to let him swing
Right.
and finally remove the entire board from Ryvius. No weapon visible, but Ryvius glaives.
Right, exactly. The equilibrium doesn't stop now either.
But if Ryvius is just gonna spend the turn tanking at least 6 damage, the equilibrium ends in che0nsu's favor because he will still have more of a board presence. Ryvius will be at a lower health total, and che0nsu has his metamorphosis unlocked.
He does, but is that enough aggression? You know, he's drawing cards off the top. He's likely to find something to bolster his game plan. But as it currently stands, this isn't enough to get the job done at all.
Yeah, agreed. But looking at Ryvius's hand, it's also very light. He has an extra
It's
piece
true.
of card. He's not under very much pressure himself. And now with Altruist, suddenly any relatively cheap card from che0nsu is just more
Yeah.
burst.
He is closer than I thought he'd be.
Oh, drawing air on both sides. Okay.
It's not bad. How is he supposed to do this? If he goes face, he obviously can't attack again, but you're not sinking 5 damage
No
into a
way.
1-1 here.
There is no way. He's just gonna go Umber Wing, sidekick,
Yeah.
float the hero. Wait a minute. He could have fit in. Oh, never mind. Not enough mana.
Ah, yes, mana, that limiting factor that often appears
Oh.
in Hearthstone games.
What? I never heard of mana being limited for Demon Hunter. Look at this.
Yeah, well, speaking of, here is the skull. If you wanted to cheat some mana out, this is the premium way to do so. That is an insane card for che0nsu to top deck, and just look at Ryvius' reaction. That tells you everything you need to know.
Uh-huh. Not the greatest. Cheapened cards and immediately free up his Spectral Sight for outcast value this turn. But does he want to do that? Or does he just want to go for the Altruist lethal? I think you hold everything. Ship the
It's
rest of the
just so
face.
much damage.
Yeah.
And it's looking like it's going to ramp up to even more with a Spectral Sight as well.
And it is very specific combinations of cards from Ryvius that could present a counter lethal. Oh! Hey! This is developing. That is too short.
Now I am complete.
Incredibly close. It does force Ryvius to remove.
So close.
Yeah. That is just gotta be lethal for che0nsu, right?
Does it have to be?
What
What if he just gets 2 expensive cards off the Spectral Sight?
That is true.
Or even just 1 expensive card, if it sandwiches his cheap cards in the middle.
He could just
I
go
guess he could play
second
them from
size
the
from the
left
left.
then.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
you bring up
okay.
a really good point. It is not necessarily lethal for che0nsu because he played a bunch of these 1-drops that, again, I'm not too sure of expending them on the board there. It did force Ryvius to metamorphose onto a minion, but he wouldn't have been dead anyway to adjust metamorphosis.
But now the question for Ryvius is, does he trade? If he goes all face, he sets up guaranteed lethal just from hand on the following turn. But he's going down to just 7 health then. That's King.
Oh man. So
That's just GG. Or is it not?
I think it is not guaranteed, right?
1 off?
Yeah. 2 off.
Hide behind your servants. I will
Oh my gosh. Oh
He
yeah,
is
1 off with the
1
attack, you're right.
1 damage off
Oh
lethal.
my gosh.
Whoa!
Oh!
That's game!
Game! What? How did Ryvius take this?
1 health, Gia!
Oh!
That was the absolute thinnest of margins possible. If Ryvius had gone face instead of trading that last turn, he was dead at exactly 1 health.
The trade was crucial there. But the other crucial decision was che0nsu playing his 0-cost 1-drops that one turn. I don't know if it was necessary. it could have given him the lethal with Altruist had he held on to them, and I don't think he was very likely to die. In fact, playing the minions immediately doesn't really stop any damage because they're not removing what Ryvius had on board. They're just presenting scapegoats for a potential next turn. But I think the way that che0nsu's hand was lining up was that he didn't even have to worry about the following turn. Just his own lethal condition immediately after.
I think you're exactly right, G. I'd almost kind of forgotten that in the explosiveness of the actual final turn, but the setup there for che0nsu, it opened up targets for I-Beam from his opponent, even just for the Glavebound Adept to trade into stuff on the board with the 4 damage. There are multiple ways that the minions can be killed off without netting any damage at all. And maybe che0nsu just overestimated how good of a board position he'd end up in if he played his minions onto the board.
Yeah. Well, that was extremely exciting, but we are going to head into a Druid game right now. A mirror, in fact, also explosive, but maybe not quite in the same intricacy level as the Demon Hunter mirror.
Yeah, this can be a little bit interesting, I suppose, is the word to say. There's no Starfall for either player, which is the card that can swing it back from an explosive start from the other. And there is, of course, the che0nsu available for che0nsu later on. But I think we can both agree, generally, it doesn't even get to that point.
Yep, the first and foremost, and by far the most frequent way that the matchup resolves is that one player gets to go fly first. If the other player is not able to deal with it or present their own glowfly, they often just die.
And there is a great way to try and find that glowfly for Ryvius. He would be only up to 9 cards, so he wouldn't even overdraw. And he discards the other Mount Seller anyway.
Okay, Innervate is a big one because if he gets Glowfly, he will be able to play it first because as it stands, che0nsu on the coin, neither of them with ramp would theoretically be able to play it first, but oh my gosh. Coin Glowfly into Glowfly! That sounds good.
That does indeed. Crystal Power for literally 0 value? Sign me up.
Just make sure you
Heal
don't
your opponent,
overdraw.
why not? You're still winning.
At this point, che0nsu is a Savage Roar away from game set. Oh, never mind!
Ooh.
Okay, we got a game, Derek! That is just gonna be for 6 flies, but you take it if you're gonna be the first one onto the board. It's such a big deal.
So far and away the most important thing. Problem is, of course, Ryvius doesn't have any real follow-up to that. He has no Power of the World, no Soul of the Forest, no Savage Roar, whereas che0nsu does.
He's got 2 chances to draw into one, the natural draw and something from Rising Winds. There's also an option to Overgrowth now, which makes his Bog Beam cost 0, and then he could just set the board to parity and then try and go off with the Mount Seller next turn.
I wonder if he even goes for Overgrowth Bog Beam into Overflow and just pray that there's no second Glowfly Swarm from che0nsu. Probably his best bet.
Yeah, Overflow looks better because he will be expending the 0 cost card if he plays Bog Beam right now. He technically doesn't have to. He could just trade down 6 minions.
That's true. I think even then a single spell Exotic Mount Seller isn't quite ambitious enough.
Right. It will, though, probably have if the response from che0nsu is the second Glowfly, and we can see it will be. So Ryvius might be forced off Overflow, but with the use, he is committing to the Overflow next turn.
Or at the very least, probably a Rising Winds.
Have another Ryvius. Ooh. Okay. Gonna make the hand space. Try and draw. Hope that he's not dead on the next turn. To be fair, it would probably take a 2-card combination.
Moonfire is good. Ironbark is fantastic. Innervate is fantastic.
I don't think he plays anything from the hand, right? Just save it all for the Mount Seller. Oh, never mind. He can go for Wrath right now. Makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Especially as if he wants to as well. It doesn't even have to be a Mount Seller next turn. We could be looking at Ysera plus Ironbark.
That feels really slow. It is more health, but is it better than just giving up 3 health difference? Sorry, 4 health difference to generate 2 more minions?
I'm not sure.
I'm still looking at the Iron Bar. 3 more minions, in fact, because he can also play the Rising Winds.
Fair enough.
Yet again, I'm thinking that it has to be Diving Griffin for him to come back from this. Because che0nsu, we've only been pointing out 1 or 2 cards from his hand per turn, and that's enough to summarize this game plan. Because he's just got the Innervate Gift of the Wild next turn.
Right, and the only reason I point out the Ysera is just if he thinks he's so far behind that even the random beasts can't pull him out, that he has to just go Ysera plus a bunch of dragons on the following turn. But especially with the Crystal Power pickup, I'm on your side here. This should be a Mount Seller turn.
So we have a chance at 3 Diving Griffins.
He's thinking about it, though.
Oh, man. che0nsu
Imagine
doesn't
if you
have
got
more.
Overflow into 5 evasive Draconids.
Okay. That's probably lower odds than Griffin.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Not the right cook-off.
That's a dud.
What? Why are there so many messenger rape? I feel like there's one beast of the week that just shows he hit the bingo. Why does this happen so often? I feel like
What?
When did they include this in the balance patch? When did they nerf exotic monster?
Raven,
This is
you're
just game,
not casting APAC anymore. You're not welcome. Go back to Europe.
This is just game.
Yeah, it's just game.
I can't wrap my head around this. There's 16 3-cost beasts. So the odds of this happening was 1 in 16 to the 3rd that any one beast.
No, G, you don't have to work that out. Lorinda, run the stats on that. We want to know what the odds are of 4 Ravens in a row.
5 if you count appearing in Europe shortly. Oh my gosh. What?
Well, that's the Druid mirror. I don't know what else to tell you. It's a bit of a fiesta.
I mean, to be fair, I saw something I've never seen in a Druid mirror before. Just 4 of the same beast.
Yeah, well, it doesn't mean that Ryvius is simultaneously the unluckiest and luckiest player in the world. It's kind of lucky, like, in the way when a bird poos on you, people say it's lucky. And you're like, well, no, it's not. I'm still just covered in bird poo. I don't know if that's a thing outside of England, but it is here.
Yeah.
An insight into how bleak our country is. But anyway, now for Ryvius, with the Druid as the only remaining deck. He still has Gia, the mirror aside, 2 pretty poor matchups, in my opinion.
Yeah, Zoo and Demon Hunter both able to put on a lot of early pressure before Druid can even get their own board states online. I keep going on and on about it, but it really does hinge on, in my opinion, a turn 3 Glowfly. If it comes even on turn 4 with just an Innervate or just a coin, it feels oftentimes, because that turn of development is not immediately affecting the opposing board. And by that time, Demon Hunter's probably racked up 18 damage or something, and then you're dead on the backswing. With Zoo, if it's an early Scrap Imp, could be a similar story.
Yeah, and that's why, of course, some of the other players pivoted over to running the Starfall, because as we've seen with Demon Hunter having so many 2-health minions, and the nerfs to the Frenzied Felwing, making that so even more of the minions only have 2 health, Starfall can just completely obliterate the board. Counteracted, of course, somewhat by the Beaming Sidekick that's made its way into the vast majority of the list. But overall, I still think that Ryvius is going to be very sad that he doesn't have the slightly more anti-aggro version of the deck.
We're going to see here from che0nsu. This is one of the matchups where you can just appreciate having Flame Imps included in the list, I think. A lot of people have been cutting it, but ever since, Druid has struggled with this early minion, and already
Well, already the Merchant, but also already Coin, Wild Growth, Overgrowth, Mount Seller, plus double 0 mana spell.
Gosh.
This is insane from Ryvius.
This is the Turbo Nuts. Just as APAC is in general.
Exactly, Gia. Just what I was about to say. But double Flame Imp, that has been the bane of Druid since vanilla, since the start of Hearthstone.
Generally is, but the fact that Ryvius's 0-cost spells that he can pair with Mount Seller, one of them immediately removes something. I think even this blisteringly fast start from che0nsu could be diffused.
It is going to be very, very close indeed. Especially as soon as Ryvius actually kills off the Mount Seller, che0nsu just starts drawing yet again with the Matron.
Right, as soon as his merchant dies. The play of Carpet this turn is super relevant. He has made it so that it's dying to almost no combinations of cards from Ryvius. And so he will be able to get to charge out these 1-drops. Rush out, I should say. That is not a Raven. I didn't know that was possible.
That's
also
a King
not
Muckler,
Raven.
though. I think you're much happier to see that. On average, though, the stats even out to almost Raven. It's pretty close. We'll call that number 4 and 5.
Yeah. Nightshade Matron and Blazing Battle Mage. Actually, you probably don't even play the Matron this turn, right? You could get more damage in now by playing a bunch of 1-drops.
Many possibilities.
Priority number 1 is to deal with the Mount Seller, and it would be nice to also kill off the Mukla and preserve his Carpet the best he can. So I'm looking at Battle Mage, Abusive Sergeant, the Battle Mage. That's already 5 attack, and then the Abusive itself is another 2. So maybe the buff could go elsewhere, and then he could just rush in a Void Walker as well.
Well, this line does still allow him to very easily take out the Mount Seller.
It does, but
if he were to go with the Matron.
Doesn't it feel bad to spend 4 mana and trade a 5/5 into a 5/8 versus a bunch of smaller minions? And then he can still get the draw next turn no matter what he draws, because Hand of Gul'dan is the most expensive card in the deck.
Yeah, I'm on board.
Get in there and fight, man.
Whatever he's going to do, though, it has to be right now from che0nsu.
Okay, this works as long as both of the big threats are cleared up. Oh! Oh no!
Yeah, he just missed the attacks.
I thought he got the commands, and that is absolutely huge. And with the draw of Crystal Power, Ryvius can just heal his merchant back up. The other merchant if he wants.
Instead, he's just going Glowfly Swarm. So what? It only makes 2 Glowflies. Power of the Wild, Crystal Power. This board is going nowhere. Game over.
It really is. You can see it on che0nsu's face as well.
Goes with this line even to take off the Carpet. This is even better.
And this is really heartbreaking to watch. Yet another instance of a mistake commonly do, which is tunneling on optimizing your trades when you don't have time. Sometimes just the non-optimal is enough to win you the game, and it's part of recognizing that when you're not able to calculate the very best trades on time. It's fine to say, okay, this wasn't perfect, but it clears the big threat.
I completely agree with you, Gia. This is something we saw so consistently last year in APAC, which I thought we'd move past from, to be perfectly honest, which was that good enough is good enough. Yes, there are always ways that you can make your, or usually ways that you can optimize slightly. But you've just got to get the plays down in order to just do anything this turn and not lose the game on the spot.
This draw from Ryvius, I was saying maybe it's not 100% over if the Mount Seller doesn't get to go off again this turn, but that is probably the best one for Ryvius to draw.
This is so over.
Yeah.
No burst lethal, I don't think that can come down from che0nsu at all.
No.
And outside of that, there is nothing to be done. No spells, I don't think, that can clear off this board. Even if you discover a Plague of Flames, not enough minions in play. And basically what was just a blunder to end out a incredibly close series, all things considered, does put Ryvius in the lead with the win.
And he knows it, but honestly, I feel that the smile is a bit half-hearted because I would assume that che0nsu are friends, and you probably don't feel great to take a win purely because your opponent wasn't playing up to par. I mean, it's still very well deserved on Ryvius's part. No fault to him, but man, I hope che0nsu can get it together after this.
Well, based on what's happened in APAC, Gia, I can't say I agree with you, given that after a devastating mistake was made, one of the other players started breakdancing on camera.
Okay.
The data does not agree with you.
That one game, I don't think Tyler had the clearest read about what went wrong for Don there.
Yeah.
It could have looked fishy, but he couldn't
Sure.
see the hand and the way it was leading up to a miscounted lethal like we could. I don't think Tyler meant anything bad by it, but man, that made for one of the most brutal sequences I've ever seen in GM.
It really did. That is a legendary moment that will live down in infamy forever. But we are all done with our third game of the day. We got 2 more matches coming at you later on today. We are going to go to Alutemu versus Surrender and then Tom60229 versus Samuel Sao. Honestly, I can't choose which one I'm more excited about. They are both going to be so exciting for very different reasons. But we are going to take an ever so slightly longer break now in order to set up for these last couple of matches. So make sure you get a drink, do whatever you need to do before we head into the last couple of matches for today, because you are not going to want to miss them after this.